Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and we really appreciate you joining us for today's show. We continue our conversations with some of the best and most interesting ghost tour companies in the world, with a trip to the Pacific Northwest. We will be chatting with our friends from Spooked in Seattle. Not only will they be telling us a little bit about the city and some of its ghost stories, but they also do something quite unique, where they have a death museum as part of the experience. Not only that, but they have a haunted doll collection, including a very infamous doll known as Mr. Creepy. You're not going to want to miss this. But before we get to that, if you do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Haunted Walk, you know this past week we launched our next major haunted innovation, and that is called The Haunting at Laurier House in Ottawa. Now, Laurier House is a very unique building. It was the home of two prime ministers, including Sir Wilfrid Laurier and his wife Zoe, who both passed away in the residence. After that, it became the home for William Lyon Mackenzie King, who without question is a prime minister that had a very deep interest in spiritualism and the supernatural. In fact, in that building, hundreds of seances and table rapping sessions were held. And you have to wonder if all those sessions maybe have left a bit of a door open to the other side. If you're a fan of scary movies, ghost investigations, or just want to have a thrilling night out, you need to join us for The Haunting at Laurier House, taking place in Ottawa this fall. The first night is, of course, Friday, September 13th, and then we'll be running throughout the Halloween season into November. And as a little Easter egg, if you have watched that promo, somewhere in there you'll hear a bit of a demonic laugh. And that's actually me when I started laughing at an outtake we were doing, and it sounded so creepy, we just left it in there. Speaking of the Halloween season, some of the tours are going up for sale now. So if you're looking ahead to the fall, what you've been doing around Halloween, we do have some options already available in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto. And information about all those experiences, our schedule, can be found at hauntedwalk.com. Remember to use the promo code Haunted Talks, all one word, Haunted Talks, at checkout to get 15% off all your tickets as a regular listener to the show. If you're enjoying the episodes, we would encourage you to subscribe, and we would absolutely love to get a 5-star review from you. All right, everyone, gather up your belongings. That was a bit of a long flight over the Rocky Mountains, but we have arrived in the Emerald City. Let's go talk with our friends at Spooked in Seattle.
Ross Allison. I am the owner of Spooked in Seattle Ghost Tours.
I love asking fellow ghost tour operators a little bit about their backstory before we get into the ghost stories themselves. How did you end up becoming the owner of a ghost tour company?
Well, I run the oldest ghost hunting group in the Pacific Northwest, known as a GHOST, which stands for the Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle-Tacoma. And I've been doing this for about 30 years. And I travel all over the world and looking for haunted locations, doing investigations. And of course, when I travel, I tend to always, look for the ghost tours because it's always a good lead for following up on some, haunted locations that I might want to investigate. But the problem I found, and this is, going way back, before ghost hunting was, as popular as today, I found that a lot of these tours were making up stories and dramatizing stories just for the fact that it was a ghost tour and their main focus was to scare people. And so, after taking a tour and I'd hear, I got to check out that place. I want to see what's going on. And then you look into the place and you find out that what you learned on the ghost tour was nothing about what's, happening in the place. I was kind of a little frustrated with that. Now, I had been investigating Seattle, especially the Pioneer Square area, which is the most historic part of Seattle for quite some time. And I had collected all these stories and all this evidence. And I was working on a book as well, Spooked in Seattle. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do a ghost tour, but I want to do it different. I really wanted to focus on what's really happening in a lot of these places and share some of the evidence that we collected on these investigations. And so that's really what started it all, because I found that the scariest stories, of course, are the real ones. And so that's how Spooked in Seattle Ghost Tours was born.
Now, Seattle is a city I've been fortunate enough to visit, and I absolutely loved spending time there. But as we have listeners from around the world, we have many folks, of course, who have not had that opportunity to visit. Could you let us know what makes Seattle a great haunted city?
Well, surprisingly, of course, Seattle is one of the youngest cities out there. Washington's one of the later states that was developed, later territories. So it's kind of surprising, compared to the East Coast, that we would have such a rich haunted history. But then, consider the fact that we've also had our fair share of tragic history as well, which tends to be a root to a lot of the hauntings that take place in this location. So, I'm very grateful for the fact that, Seattle does have a pretty interesting history, from the Seattle Underground, brothels and, speakeasies and all kinds of fun stuff. And I think that's what's really the route that draws a lot of people to the Seattle area, especially when you get into, what it's most famous for is the Seattle Underground. And Spooked in Seattle does, have a piece of the Seattle Underground that we take you into in the dark.
And I'm curious, my impressions of being there, maybe flying in, of course, and seeing Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier is our big icon.
Does the nature or the natural setting or geography of the city play a role, do you think, in its haunted reputation?
There's a lot of theories out there that, of course, running water is a big thing. And Seattle is right next to, of course, the bay. But I think it's more has to do with the history, not necessarily, just the environment of the nature around us. I think that a lot of it, for a lot of these major cities that have these amazing ghost tours, it has a lot to do with the history that takes place in these cities.
Now, every ghost tour company seems to have their own unique way of conducting tours or experiences or storytelling even. What approach does Spooked in Seattle take?
Well, our main focus is, of course, we're run by, real paranormal investigators. So our main way of telling stories is through our research and through our evidence collected during our investigations. So we do focus on sharing a lot of the photos, video clips, and EVPs that we captured. So I think that's fun. That makes a whole new element to a lot of the ghost tours, when you can actually share the evidence that people have experienced.
And can you tell me a little bit about the Death Museum?
Oh, our Death Museum, yes. We are the first Death Museum in the Northwest. And the Death Museum basically covers a lot of vintage 1800s death memorabilia. We go into mourning dresses, so we have a lot of that. We have mourning jewelry. We have a lot of embalming equipment. We have coffins from the 1800s. We have old tombstone markers. So we do talk a lot about the history and the culture of death customs. But then also, along with that, we also have a nice haunted collection as well. So we've got quite a few haunted dolls, haunted toys and objects. One of our most famous dolls that we have is Mr. Creepy. He's been getting a lot of media attention. He's showed up on television shows and in books and in magazines. And I'd be more than happy to share a story if you'd like to hear it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Mr. Creepy is a ventriloquist doll. He was made in the early 1960s by a retired ventriloquist artist. And he made this doll in his likeness, and he made a female counterpart in his wife's likeness. Now, what makes these dolls extra creepy is they actually use their real hair on the dolls.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, unfortunately, the couple passed away, and after their passing, the dolls were sold as a pair. And of course, a woman who deals with antiques, she purchased the dolls and she put them on a shelf behind her register. And they sat there for a good long time and no issues whatsoever. Well, unfortunately, they ended up selling her building. So this means that she had to pack up her shop and move to another location. So, of course, she packed up the dolls separately and she put them into storage. And when she got her new location, she constantly went to the storage unit pulling pieces to restock her store. And, of course, she found, the male figure, but she couldn't find the female. But she went ahead and took the male to the store and she put him in a display case behind the register. Well, right away, she kept having these weird feelings, like there was somebody standing behind her, watching her, breathing down the back of her neck. She just kept getting these chills. She said some days she'd come in and she'd find that, his head would be turned in another direction. Some days his eyes would be looking in another direction. Now, what's really weird about that is his eyes are actually spring-loaded. So what that means is when you're playing around with the trigger to move his eyes left or right, once you let go of the trigger, his eyes automatically spring right back to the center. So they cannot stay left or right unless you're holding onto the trigger. But there are times when she would come in and find that he'd be looking left or looking right. In fact, we've experienced it since we've had him at Spooked in Seattle. So she's experiencing this, but then she'd also come in and she'd find that the glass case would be wide open. After all these experiences, she just basically had enough of him. So she moved him to the back of the store and put him on a bottom shelf. So she didn't have to see him every day. So, of course, when I go into a lot of these antique stores looking for, death memorabilia for my museum, I always ask, well, do you have anything that's, interesting or odd? And, of course, immediately she introduces me to Mr. Creepy. And that's the name she gave him, not a name I gave him. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is great. I would love to give him a home at Spooked in Seattle. And I should point out, she was so happy to get rid of him that she sold me him for $1.
Good deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great deal. So I get him to Spooked in Seattle and I put him in this nice antique glass case that we had. And I was alone at Spooked one day when I was in the office and I heard this thud against glass. And I immediately thought something happened in the gift shop. So I go, exploring the gift shop. I can't find anything disturbed. And I'm still kind of puzzled as to, what made this noise? So I'm kind of walking around. And as I walk around the tables, I'm now facing the glass case where all these dolls that we have on display are. And immediately I notice that his head is now turned and up against the glass. So I, being the ghost hunter I am, I quickly, pull out my cell phone and I take a picture just to show that this did happen. And sure enough, what was really odd is in the photo, if you look at his reflection in the glass, you can actually see what looks like more of a human-like figure rather than the ventriloquist doll. Because if you see pictures of this doll, and you can look him up, he's on the internet. He's got very round, cheeks, a very round face, big round eyes, very cartoonish looking. But in his reflection, he's got this more elongated face, very droopy eyes, and again, more lifelike looking. And a lot of people ask me, what's going on? And I think he's just looking for the female counterpart. They have not been separated since the day they were created. So I am on a quest to try and find her. So I have posted quite a few ads out there, Mr. Creepy looking for Mrs. Creepy. Yeah, because I just believe that these two souls are just wanting to get back together.
Absolutely. You'll have to let us know if they are ever reunited. A haunted doll love story, I think, is pretty unique in the industry.
It would be, definitely.
That's a great spooky tale. I wonder if you have one more you could share with us, maybe about a building or landmark in Seattle that particularly grabs your attention.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, if you ever get a chance to come out to Spooked in Seattle, we also have the opportunity to take people inside a lot of the haunted locations that we've investigated. So that's another unique element to our tours. We actually have been working for quite a few years at Merchant's Cafe. Now, Merchant's Cafe is actually a little more famous because it was featured on the Dead Files twice, and it was featured on another show called When Ghosts Attack. and it's notorious for its ghosts. In fact, I had quite a few experiences there. I remember one time when we were doing an actual investigation, I had been downstairs, and the downstairs is a little more active because the story is that back in 1938 there was a fire, and there was a little boy and a little girl that were playing down in the basement area. And when they tried to escape up the back staircase, they unfortunately perished due to the smoke. They do believe that those two young souls haunt that location. So during one of our investigations, I happened to be sitting at a table, and I look up to get a measurement of the doorway that leads to the underground section. And I just wanted to get a measurement of that doorway, and I look over, and right between me and that doorway is this little dark figure standing there. And it's just like I'm puzzled. I'm trying to focus on it. And as soon as I focus on it, it immediately runs away and, darts behind a column. So that was one of my first experiences there. Now, another time I was actually doing one of our tours, and I was really excited about this tour because we had just been told of a new encounter that somebody had. And whenever, we hear these, news stories, we try to add them to the tour so that people know these places are still very active. So I actually had a small group with me that day. And since it was a small group, I thought I'd, introduce them to the women's restroom, which is down the hall. So I, come around the wall, and I look down the hallway towards the women's restroom. And right when I look down the hallway, the women's restroom door slammed shut. And it slammed hard enough that it startled me, and everybody else that was on the tour that was right behind me, they all heard it. So I quickly turned around, and I'm looking for one of the women on the tour, and I said, could you please check and just make sure there's no one in there, just to validate our experience? And she looks back at me. She's, are you freaking kidding me? And so, she finally convinces herself to do it by asking one of her girlfriends to join her. And they both go in the women's restroom. Nobody there. Now, there's no windows down there because, again, this is the basement area. There's no fan system that's going to cause this door to slam shut. Well, the whole reason why I wanted to introduce them to the women's restroom, because I was getting ready to tell this story. There was a woman eating at the restaurant. Now, she comes downstairs to use the women's restroom, and right when she hit the bottom steps, she looks up and sees a woman ahead of her go into the women's restroom and shut the door behind her. Now, this woman is not aware if this is a single-person restroom or a multiple-person restroom, but she assumes by the size of the place that it's most likely going to be a single, so she'll just wait until she's done. So she stood at the end of the hall, and she's waiting for this woman to finish up. And, of course, she's waiting and waiting and waiting, and no one's coming out of this woman's restroom. So she decides to go check on her, and when she opens the door, she's surprised to find there's nobody else in that restroom. So we definitely do have a haunted women's restroom at Merchant's Cafe.
Nice. That's a great story. You said there was a fire in the building you think is the cause of the haunting there.
Well, for the children, they do believe that is the children that died during the fire. Now, as to the woman, there are various stories that some psychics have come in and said that they believe that she is the wife of the original builder of the building. But then I have heard stories, too, that they believe that she is the mother of the children. So we haven't been able to validate which one is true, but those are three of the most common spirits down in that basement area.
Very fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and the story of Mr. Creepy as well, who I'll be looking up immediately at the conclusion of the interview. Now, if our listeners are interested in finding more out about your company, how to get tickets, information, that kind of thing, where's the best place for them to go?
You'd want to go to spookedinseattle.com, and that's spookedinseattle.com. We offer all kinds of fun ghost tours. We start our first tours at 6 o'clock every day. And then we offer different types of tours. We also have a How to Murder tour. And that is a tour that teaches you about some of the most notorious murder cases that took place in Seattle. And I always tell people you may walk away with some great ideas. We also have a haunted pub tour, which is run by a few of our madams and ladies of the night. And that'll take you around through Seattle's most notorious haunted pubs. And you get to hear some more of the shadier stories, more adult-themed stories. So that's always a lot of fun. Then we also offer ghost hunts, where we do a ghost hunt at the Seattle Underground. We also do a ghost hunt at University Heights, which is an old elementary school. And we also have one on the USS Turner Joy, which is a retired Navy destroyer. And every so often, and if you're at the right place at the right time, you may be able to spend the night on the ship as well. And also check out our Facebook page. You may want to see what we're up to. We do a lot of fun things on our Facebook page. But I also, too, want to let people know that we've been very fortunate as being featured as one of the top ghost tours in America. And there's been quite a few outlets that have featured us for that. And that's a huge honor, especially, as I said, we're such a young city. So we definitely appreciate the love and support people offer us. For everybody out there, just be safe.
A big thank you to Ross, Allison, and all our friends at Spooked in Seattle for helping arrange the interview. As always, a big thank you to our Haunted Talks team, including Michelle Dennis, our intrepid audio editor, and Ezra Badeau, our summer intern. And of course, Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for the additional music. Information about all our tours, including the brand new Haunting at Laurier House, can be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Remember to use the promo code Haunted Talks, all one word, Haunted Talks, at checkout to get 15% off all your tickets as a regular listener to the show. And we'd love to connect with you on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.